All right, hi. So this is going to be an extra video that's going to dive pretty in depth into how to play my transcription of the Pastorale Symphony. So if you're just somebody who's interested in kind of general interest, what I'm doing, this might not be for you, but if you're interested in playing it, you might get a lot out of this. That being said, go ahead and watch it anyway if you would like, whether or not you're going to play it on the uke. So one of the things I'd recommend you do is you can go to the link down below if you haven't already and get on my email list. And I'll send you a copy of the first page of the tablature is what we're going to talk about today. So you can download that and print it out and follow along with that if you would like. All right, so what I wanted to think about first of all is just thinking about how to play a piece of music like this or any other piece of music for that matter in the context of the basic elements of music that we think about, the basic elements that we use to describe any piece of music or any sound, really. And those elements are pitch is the first element. That's the highness or the lowness of the sound. And then the next would be duration or rhythm. So how long each one of those sounds lasts that we're listening to. And then the third element would be timbre or the tonal quality or the tonal color of the sound. And finally, the fourth element is dynamics or volume or how loud or how soft a sound is. So we're going to talk about that in relation to this transcription of the Sixth Symphony. So a couple of things for us to keep in mind. First of all, in terms of pitch, and I just want to give you a general overview of pitch. So a uke itself, the ukulele, it's a fairly high-pitched instrument. This note right here, some of you might know that on the piano as being middle C, and that's the lowest note that a uke can play. The highest note on a soprano uke is up here. That's the A on the staff above a middle C. And the highest note mine can play, my particular instrument, is on the 19th fret of the first string. That's an E way up above the staff. And so I've written this. I think I'll put a link to a PDF down here if you want to look at this and follow along. But you can see right here, so there's the pitch written in the treble clef of a soprano ukulele, and then my concert ukulele, which has 19 frets. So we're dealing with about two and a half octaves of range here from the lowest note to the highest note. You compare that to an orchestra that Beethoven had at his disposal. There's a lot more range involved there in terms of pitch. So the lowest note on a contrabass was written on a grand staff right here is way down here, this E way below the bass clef staff. And then the highest note available to Beethoven in this particular piece of music is by the piccolo, and this is a C way up here, an octave higher than this particular note written above the staff. So it's a pretty large range of pitch, and the uke has a much narrower range of pitch. But we're going to do the best we can to put everything, to try to fit everything that Beethoven wrote within this about 2.5 octave range. Another thing about pitch is how it's indicated in the score. And the score that I've sent you that hope you've printed out uses tablature. And when I finally make the final version of this, I'll put in some standard notation as well. But I figure that tablature is probably the easiest for everybody who wants to follow along to work with for right now. And it has some advantages over standard notation for an ukulele with a reentrant tuning like we have. So anyway, when we look at the ukulele tablature, there are 4 lines on the tablature staff, and each one of those lines corresponds with one of the strings on the ukulele. So you notice we have 4 strings. And the way I'm holding it here, so the first string is right here, second, third string, fourth string. So the strings are arranged in that order, and that's how the tablature staff works. If you can see right here, the tablature staff has those 4 lines. So the top line represents the first string, second line represents the second string, and so on. We put a number on one of those lines, and the number represents what fret to press down. So for instance, if I see the number 1 on the second line down, that would indicate press down on the first fret of the second string. If I see a 0, that means play the string open. So if I saw a 0 placed on the third line down, that would mean to play the third string open. Several numbers on top of each other mean play those notes simultaneously. So in the example that I have here, if you see a 1 on the top line, and then a 0 below that on the next line, and then a 0 below that on the third line down, that would indicate play the first fret on the first string, at the same time play the open second string, and then play the open third string at the same time. So you get that kind of a chord right there. Okay, so that's about all we want to talk about for pitch right now. So if you want to follow along with the transcription, you should be familiar with tablature and how to read it, but I just explained it, and I think it's pretty easy. All right, the next thing, and probably the most important element of music by far, is duration. So how long the sounds last. And we want to talk about that in quite a bit of detail before we get into the first movement of the Beethoven Sixth Symphony. So one of the things we want to talk about is that the first movement of the Sixth Symphony is what we call duple meter. You'll see the time signature at the beginning of the transcription. That's these two numbers right here. It says 2-4. So 2-4 times the time signature that indicates what we call a duple meter. And what that means is there are beats going by in groups of 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, like that. Okay, Beethoven is very economical in the use of rhythms in this particular piece. He only uses about, I think, 7 different rhythms that I wrote out, and you can see these at the bottom of this page. I prefer my tablature, when I write out ukulele tablature, I prefer to have the rhythms in the tablature whether I'm dealing with standard notation or not. That way I can just look down at the tablature and read off of that. But you can see the different rhythms indicated by stems coming off of the numbers and then beams connecting those stems together. So we have, like I said, about 7 basic rhythms. So one of them is written down here. Okay, this would be simple 8th note rhythms. This is the rhythm of the first measure of the piece. So that would be 1 and 2 and. So dividing up the first beat into 2 parts and dividing up the second beat into 2 parts. 1 and 2 and. Okay, the next measure features a rhythm like this. So it's an 8th, 2 16ths, and then 2 8ths. 1 and a 2 and, like that. So we see that rhythm quite a bit in the first movement of this piece. The third rhythm that I've written out here reverses that. So we have 2 8th notes and then an 8th followed by 2 16ths. So that would be 1 and 2 and a bum, 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 like that. Okay, another rhythm that we have sometimes is just 2 quarter notes, 1 note on each of the beats. 1, 2, like that. Another rhythm that we will see occasionally is what we call a dotted quarter note followed by an 8th note. So that's going to be 1 and, like that. Okay, and then we see this rhythm a little later on in the transcription in the first couple of pages. This is a quarter note followed by a group of 4 16th notes. 1, 2 and like that. Okay, I wrote out also a couple of other rhythms that we encounter. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, actually, I didn't write it in any other rhythms we encountered, but a couple of other things that involve duration in the tablature. One of the things is this symbol we see above this chord in the 1, 2, 3, 4th measure of the piece. This little thing looks like a bird's eye. We call that a fermata. It means to hold. So I'm just going to hold that particular chord. And how long I hold it is kind of up to me. So it's up to the discretion of the performer how long we would hold that. Another thing we want to talk about when we talk about performing a piece of music is tempo. So we have 2 beats in a measure. It's what we call duple meter. 1, 2, 1, 2. The speed of those beats is what we call the tempo. And Beethoven actually indicates a fairly fast tempo at the beginning of this piece. One of the ways that tempos are indicated in the music is through usually a group of Italian words or one Italian word. So in the case of this particular piece, allegro ma non troppo, right at the beginning, means fast, but not too fast, kind of fast. Okay, that's kind of contradicted by the metronome marking that Beethoven provides later. He says a half note equals 66, and you can see that right here. Half note equals 66. What that means is a half note, which is the duration of one full measure, is going by 66 times a minute. That's actually quite fast. That's 1, 2, something like that. 1. So if you tried to play the piece like that, it would be impossibly fast. Okay, I think actually Beethoven, when he wrote the Sixth Symphony, the metronome was not invented yet. That's something that came later, and he went back to his symphonies and added metronome markings a little later on. But by that time, he was completely deaf, and I think he misjudged some of the things. So I think we need to take this tempo indication with a grain of salt and just say it's fast, but not too fast. All right, finally, the other thing we want to talk about here before we get into playing the first couple of licks of the Sixth Symphony is the idea of timbre. So Beethoven wrote the Sixth Symphony for a full orchestra that uses a full string section with violins, 2 sections of violins, a section of violas, section of cellos, and a section of contrabasses or bass violins. Also uses some wind. So he uses a woodwind section that includes piccolos, flutes, oboes, clarinets, and bassoons. Also uses a brass section that includes horn, trumpet, and in the final movement, alto and tenor trombone. There's also a percussion section which consists of one lonely percussionist who's playing the timpani or kettle drum. Okay, my arrangement uses only the ukulele, so we're kind of limited in terms of the timbral variety we can use on this instrument, but you can actually do a lot with the different timbres on the ukulele. You can make a lot of different sounds. Okay. When I did this transcription, I only used my thumb. So everything I play in the videos that you watch where I'm performing pages from the score, and the way I'm going to demonstrate it right now is using only my thumb. So I'm holding the uke, I have my right hand out here, and my fingers are kind of cradling the upper bout down here, kind of holding the uke in place, and then I'm playing by strumming my thumb across the strings. I just transcribed it that way as a challenge to kind of limit myself in terms of what I could do with my fingers. Some of you might prefer to play this using your fingers in addition to your thumb to get a different variety, or maybe some things will be easier if you do that. But the way I'm going to demonstrate it right now is just to pluck everything with my thumb, except for another technique that I use, and you might notice in the score that several of these numbers in the tablature have curved lines connecting them. Okay, that means a slur, or what we call a hammer-on or a pull-off. Depending on which direction it's headed, if it's going from a lower fret to a higher fret, that will be what we call a hammer-on. And if it's going in the opposite direction, from a higher fret to a lower fret, we call that a pull-off. So I'm using that throughout this piece, and you can see several places where I've put in these curved lines connecting the notes together. So hammer-ons or pull-offs. And there's another thing that I use occasionally, and we can see one example of that in this piece down on page 2 of the score. If you look down here, you see between the 5th and 6th fret on the 2nd string there is a slanted line that connects those. That's what we call a slide. So that's a different technique from a slur. When I play a slur, what I'm going to do is I'll play a note with a finger or open, and then I'll use a different finger, like that maybe, to play the next note. When I do a slide, what I'm going to do is play a note with a finger, and then moving my finger, I'm going to get the next note. So that's the difference between those two things. All right, so let's get started, and I think I'll only have time right now. I wanted to keep these videos down to 20 minutes, have it be kind of a mini lesson. So hopefully that information was useful as some preliminary information for us to get started. But I want you to think and consider that when you're learning a piece of music, everything in the score, everything that you see has a meaning. So you want to pay attention to all the markings. None of the markings are unnecessary. They're all there for a reason, and they all point to something that's telling you something you should do. All right, so if we start out in the first lick of the piece goes like this. Okay, so what I'm doing there is I'm going to play, I'm starting out in the first measure, the dynamic is P, which means piano, which means quite softly. So I'm going to play the open 3rd string, then my thumb's going to go over to the open 1st string and play that. Sorry, my shirt is buzzing, the buttons of my shirt are buzzing against the uke. So let's try that again. So open 3rd string, open 1st string, then I have a curved line connecting the 0 on the 1st string with a 1. So I'm going to play open first string, and then through the action of my left hand finger alone coming down, I'm going to hammer down to that note. Okay, then I'm going to reach my pinky, my fourth finger here, up to the 5th fret on the first string and play that note. So here's the first measure. These are all 8th notes, so the rhythm, sorry, that's my dog. That's my dog there. The rhythm is going to be even 8th notes. Yes? Yes? Okay. Sorry about that. So it's 8th notes. So 1 and 2 and. Okay. The next measure, the first beat, I'm going to have a 3rd fret note pulling off to a 1st fret note and then to the open 1st string. So 3rd fret, pulling off to 1st, pulling off to open. Okay. Next beat of that measure, my thumb's going to go down to the open 3rd string, open 4th string, and then open 3rd string. So that measure is going to be, okay. 3rd measure, I'm going to play the 1st fret on the 2nd string, thumb's going to hop back to the open 4th string, and then it's going to hop over to the open 1st string, and then I'm going to play the 1st fret on the 1st string, pull it off to the open 1st string, then finally in the 4th measure, which is the end of the 1st phrase, my thumb is going to brush across the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings like that. So okay, let me do that again. I'm going to count out the rhythm. So the rhythm in the first measure, 8th notes, 1 and 2 and. Next measure, 1 and a 2 and. Then the next measure, 1 and 2 and a. Final measure, just play that chord, and that takes up the entire measure. So 1 and 2 and 1 and a 2 and 1 and 2 and a 1, 2. And I hold that. Okay, this particular piece, the Symphony Number 6, is in the key of F major, and that means that the key of F makes an appearance throughout a lot of the piece. It doesn't mean the entire piece is in the key of F, and there are lots of portions of the piece that aren't in the key of F at all, but that's the main key of the piece. So it's good to be familiar with what the chords look like in the key of F, because these shapes will come back over and over again within the piece. So an F chord, some of you who've played the uke before might be familiar with, looks like this. So my second finger is on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. First finger is on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, and then strum all 4 strings there. Okay, another important chord in the key of F is the B flat chord, which is played like this. And that one is a bar chord that might be, for some of you, a little tougher. So 3rd fret on the 4th string, 2nd fret on the 3rd string, and then my first finger goes down across the 1st and 2nd strings across the 1st fret. So that's going to be a B flat chord. Oftentimes I will play that and I won't include the note with the 3rd finger, so I'll just play it like this. Okay, so that's an important chord in the key of F. And another important chord in the key of F is the C chord, which is actually quite an easy chord. So that's how I play a C chord. Open 4th string, open 3rd string, open 2nd string, 3rd fret 1st string. That's a C chord. Okay. Also along with that, oftentimes we'll see a C7 chord. So a C7 chord looks like this. So it's open 4th string, open 3rd string, open 2nd string, open 1st string. Okay, so hopefully that's some useful information for you to get started with. Here again is the first phrase. This is the first 4 measures of the symphony. Have fun working with that. All right, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a question in the comments below or otherwise get in touch with me. And if you don't have the tablature, make sure to get on my email list so I can send you the tablature so you can work with this. All right, take care. Have a beautiful day.